Good morning. It's Tuesday, April 29th. We are a little bit behind this morning. We apologize to everyone, especially the ones that have waited. Sometimes we predict what's going to go on the Senate floor, and we meet at 9:30 on Tuesday mornings, and it was a long session. So I can tell you that we're probably not going to get through all of our discussions today, but if everybody's willing, we will have some time this week. What we are trying to do is we are assembling this morning to try to get down to the root of where the rub is as far as the agricultural building that's been deemed agriculture by the town and the community, and then but then we have some pushback from the environment folks in the state, and we're trying to get through to really the root of the problem, to see maybe if we could write legislation or not, or maybe it's been solved or maybe not. And so I just thought it would be great to assemble people and take some testimony on that. Carolyn, are you the one that wants to lead off with this? Okay, Carolyn Sherman Gordon, Legislative Director for Rural Vermont. The floor is yours.
Thank you guys so much for having me back, and I thought it might be beneficial just to talk through the options Ellen had worked on that you just briefly looked at on Friday. Just wanted to really share deep appreciation for you all working with Ellen on the language we had submitted on Thursday. Just from the bat, we could really live with any of those four options, but also just want to reiterate that really having legislative language that can move this year and setting that precedent in a legally binding way would be really the solution we prefer, other than just having sort of a hold off on enforcement and putting us into the situation of having to negotiate between sessions, because there is a power imbalance between the stakeholders involved. And I think having your guys' support and crafting specific legislation around multi-use and upholding the ag exemption on that would give us an advantage in the negotiations around how to further regulate accessory on-farm businesses beyond multi-use structures. So with that, yeah, there's four different options Alan had put on the table. I pulled them up here. This is the language where Act 250 in the law kind of issues these kind of permitting requirements, and this is the section subsection T that's specific for kind of the exception from permitting requirements. And this is the language that passed into law last year, where Rural Vermont said we're actually also not happy with it, because how this subsection T starts off is basically saying you don't need an Act 250 permit if your accessory on-farm business is involved with the storage or sale of qualifying products. I testified last Thursday that was already exempt because that's farming. The second sentence says you don't need an Act 250 permit if you're involved with the preparation or processing of qualifying products. And then there's this half sentence that provided that more than 50% of the total annual sales of that product comes from products produced on the farm where the business is located. We just think that's bad policy, because no one's going to go and measure the 50%. But okay, that's what passed into law last minute last year. And this first option is basically just saying, like, let's add the language Rural Vermont had worked out with the attorney from the Fable Farm Collective. This is basically option one, would just do exactly that. So this is obviously something we could live with, because this looks exactly the way we were envisioning it. So just to name that, and now I want to walk you through the other three options, how we received them. The second option here is basically just to kind of clean up what we don't like in its entirety, basically saying, like, we don't need in the Act 250 exemption this language around storage and sale of qualifying products, and we also don't need this language around preparation or processing of qualifying products, because that's all been exempt actually already as farming. Let's just say you don't need a permit as long as it's whatever you're improving the structure is actually, as long as it's primarily a farm structure, you don't need an Act 250 permit. it would be my understanding then that beyond that, you would of course need an Act 250 permit if your development constitutes a development outside of what's defined as farming and exempt as farming. So I think option 2 would go a little bit beyond what we asked and clean up more of this language that we didn't like as it passed last year. I think that would also be very much in our favor. It would make this whole exemption towards farming make more meaning, because now we say like really the core piece of Act 250 exemption is farming, and the building being primarily used as farming. I also think that the Agency of Agriculture has already the ability to determine what is farming. They issue letters to determine what types of farming practices are subject to the RAP. So there's that legally binding letter that they constitute regularly. We also seen at the precedent of Fable Farm Collective that definitely the town administrator and local zoning officials have the ability to assess what is farming and what is not. So I think there's good arguments to go with option 2 as well. I will say that's probably not the path of least resistance. Here's where option 3 and 4 come in. I think option 3 does a neat job in like just reformatting this subsection T and saying like, okay, case 1 is this case for storage and sale of qualifying products. Case 2 is this one of preparing and processing ag products, and then followed by case 3. And then it really also here kind of goes directly to the language we've been proposing, saying like, you don't need a permit for the construction of improvements for hosting events if the structure is used for the events, if that structure is primarily used as a farm structure. And this language, I will say, goes a little more narrow than what the language we submitted, just into the aspect of events. I think that might be the politically the path of least resistance right now. Of course, we see that this issue that the collective at Fable Farm is experiencing in future years or even this year might exacerbate into other accessory businesses as well. Let's say you have a old barn, you store hay in there over the winter. In the winter, the hay is all eaten up. You use that hay loft to have a child's camp, a summer camp for children. And you host them up there, and you might do some improvements to your barn because of it. Will you need an Act 250 permit or not? So I'm like, okay, narrowing this language just narrowly on events might be the path of least resistance, but it will also be the path that gets us back at this table, because we see that there will be other issues where the multi-use language, if we truly uphold it in the sense of the what is the ag exemption for farming, that it should be just it should be that the building has been created primarily for farming, and if it's that, then I think will stay our perspective that the multi-use should stay exempt. And similarly, the last option will kind of do the same thing, just narrowly on the events piece. And maybe I'm losing my chain of thought, but then of course the question would be to Ellen if I'm like understanding this these 4 options correctly.
So what is your preferred language? You shot 4 of them at us. Two.
I think my favorite would be number 2, but we could live with any of them. And I think getting what you guys could live with into the miscellaneous bill. Also notice that under today's date, there's a rewrite of the miscellaneous act bill from O'Grady that still has the old language in it from Thursday that we kind of parted from. So yeah, as long as we could move one of these versions, we'd be happy.
And I just added Ellen's to the
Okay.
list there, so you should have the 2.
Any more questions for Carolyn?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'd like
Thanks,
to-
Caroline.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to hear from Joseph, please.
Joseph Morel, Barton, Vermont.
How are you,
Thank
sir?
you. Thank you for hearing me today. Blessings.
Do you have any prepared remarks or just here?
I do not.
Okay, so Joseph, have you hired counsel?
I have.
Okay, and what's counsel said? Your counsel?
In terms of how we're responding to the notice of alleged violation.
we're kind of, I think we've kind of stumbled upon some, an email maybe that you had got to a resolution at some point in time with folks, or that's just not the way that is. So so where are you in the council, process as far as with what you?
Okay, so on November 5th, we received the first letter of notice of alleged violation from Christopher Kinnick, District 3. And we responded to that in January. We responded that indeed the building that they're talking about was a multi-use structure, and that we consider it majority farm use. And that, it was built by farmers, built on a farm, it looks like a farm building. It's not, it's not exclusively one use. It's not built in a way to be exclusively one use.
And I sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Do you know when Mr. Kinnick came and actually to the farm and actually did an inspection or anything?
I am not sure that he ever did, or I have no knowledge of when, if that did happen.
That it seems kind of important that he actually go and see what the structure is, see what goes on, see what's happening. It just
Yeah, I mean, I think if you show up, I think if you show up in the summertime and you see abandonment, it looks like a stage.
Yeah.
If you show up, in November, it's full of hay and there's sheep around that
Right.
in the orchard. So, I mean, I think it depends on what time you come.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I asked.
For sure.
Because I was unclear through this process when he actually, or if he actually came.
If.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem. So we responded to the first letter, said indeed, no, this is a farm. We are very, very serious about our ag exemption. We're putting all of our this operation. And he just responded and said, indeed, no. This is primarily a stage, and that we are going to continue to pursue action. Honestly, we didn't have a lot to go on in terms of moving forward because of the nature of this law. And I think we've, approached you all and tried to, gain greater understanding, talking to John Groveman, like just trying to understand what happened. Because essentially this bill lands an enforcement in the middle of the summer, a couple months after we've built this structure. It seems like a pretty big jurisdictional change. For all of a sudden to be getting a call from Act 250 about building a farm structure, pretty much universally recognized as a farm structure, as our town seconded. So
What is the enforcement action when they say they're gonna move forward? Did they lay that out for you of what their actions are gonna be?
they basically said, you need to apply for a permit with Act 250 immediately for this structure.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's no requirement for a district coordinator to let you know ahead of time that there'll be a visit.
Not to my knowledge.
So you don't, well, let me rephrase it. To Senator Major's question, could that have occurred without your knowledge?
Oh, easily.
So he could have visited, you just
Easily.
didn't know.
Easily, yeah.
And again, to follow up with Senator Major, I think it's crucially important that if a visit was done, it had to be more than once. Because you have to see the different times of the year when this structure is being used. So I
Or even
wonder,
just the day.
yeah,
Yeah, the day, because you could have, having been there, both.
Right. Right.
One day it's
raining, you'd have the
set up for, and then, the next day,
Right.
you use it for farm.
Right.
Yeah. When you, so you applied for the town for the barn, correct?
Right.
And did they ask you any other questions of what is it going to be used for?
Sure. Yeah.
And-
But I think also as a farm, right, we're notifying them of the fact that we have constructed this building. We actually notify them after. This wasn't a building that was right next to a highway, super close to a property line. It's in the middle of a 450 acre organically managed farm.
And do you have zoning up there?
We sure do.
Okay.
Yeah.
believe me, I've been guilty of it before. So you should have, but after you built it, you went and got. permit.
Right.
Yeah. And they knew what was going on there, so they still.
And our select board agreed.
Could you send us, we're not anywhere near the deciding factor of anything like that. We're just trying to get to the bottom of it. Could you send us at some point in time a picture of this structure?
Sure, yeah,
That would be helpful for us.
yeah.
Christopher, are you here?
I am. Yep.
Okay, would you like to add any testimony today, kind of on anything that you think that we've missed? Actually, I can tell you what we're gonna do, what we're gonna try to do next. Is I wanna talk to the person that's made the agency that's made the determination that it needs to be an Act 250 permit. But is there anything that you'd like to add to this, Christopher?
No, I think I'm all set. I think Joseph did and Carolyn. Yeah.
So committee, I'd just like to get to the bottom of where we're at with the action. I think it's important to know, I understand where Carolyn best feels that the language that we should use. I'm very appreciative of Ellen, of what she's done. I'm appreciative of everybody in here as far as coming in and testimony and everything. Ryan Silvestri, I talked to him yesterday, the Barnard assessor. He didn't seem to have a problem, although we didn't talk at length because I was going to put him first on the list today. And we ran over and he said he was going to have a hard time scheduling it. So I just kind of want to get the agency in here that's made this decision and then we can go from there. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Yes.
I will just say I'm troubled that the district coordinator apparently didn't even make a visit. I don't know how you decide on something like that unless you've physically been there, walked around and thought what was going on. So that troubles me a lot.
Okay, you can see why he did the mistake. You've seen that.
Yeah.
It's not finished. You know, most things on farms are
In progress.
in progress. It's still better than a
Sure
talk.
looks like hay storage to me.
Okay, anybody else like to add any testimony this morning? Alan? Yeah.
Ellen Chakowski, Office of Legislative Counsel. I guess, I would like to clarify a couple of.
Let's switch, let's share. Yeah, thank you.
So. I do think when the enforcement operation of the Natural Resources Board, now Land Use Review Board, does investigate, they may not always warn people they're investigating to prevent people from perhaps hiding or changing a site. So I do think it is possible that there may just have been investigation conducted without people being aware before it was conducted. And then also, so I do think the issue here is that there are two different types of statutes that are at play and they have different standards. And so that is up to the committee if you'd like to merge those standards, but Act 250 cares if the activity is commercial, even one day, it regulates commercial activity. And so it doesn't regulate farming. So the primarily or majority of the time doesn't generally come into their calculation is if you're having a commercial operation at a place that becomes a commercial structure and they regulate commercial development. But the town municipal zoning has a slightly different standard with this farm structures that are used primarily for farming. And so it is different, whereas, so I think that is the issue that's at play here is that Act 250 cares if it at all it's used for something other than farming.
So if this structure, well, I just gotta ask a question, I'm sorry, and then I'll get to you. If this structure had hay in it, and then next door to it, they put a tent up each week that they wanted to have an event, would in your opinion, would Act 250 be involved at that point in time? Is it the event that they're having that's triggering everything, or is it the actual building in itself?
So the trigger for Act 250 is the construction of improvements for commercial development. And so it really does depend on the facts of the case. And so it may, yeah.
So if they just never use the structure again and stored hay in it, does it go away?
I don't know. I don't know.
We've been told no, sorry. That even the commencement of construction is the measure for them.
But how would they know that?
I mean, can I make one comment as well? I mean, I think the assumption here is that the event, even if it is a day, is commercial. Nothing that occurs there is commercial because it's a meal. The meal is well over 51% of our food. This is something we take very seriously. So I think this is part of the ambiguity that is leading to the problem that we're in.
And I would also say that we have a jurisdictional opinion communicating to us from the NRB that the feast and field event is permissible.
I'm Amy. I'm Amy Morales' wife, also partnered. And I guess I just want to say I appreciate all the effort you're putting into this. It's remarkable. And it's a hardship for us. So it's really heartening that you're taking as much time as you are to figure this out. And I guess I would just also say that it's an agricultural act. I mean, I'm part of it, and I'm part of growing that food, and he's part of preparing it. And it's so central to what we do that it's the food that we're growing, that we're serving. So it may seem commercial from Act 250's vantage point, but from our, we wouldn't be doing it if we weren't serving our food there. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it is an agricultural act.
Ellen, did I cut you off? Did you have more? Okay. Carolyn?
And thank you, Sharon, for recognizing me. I just wanted to add this one question of Act 250 recognizing commercial uses, even just one day. Then within the definition of development, though, it still outlines specific tiers and scales of commercial use at which then the Act 250 permitting defines that commercial use as development, and still being the argument we made earlier that there's a lot of commercial uses that take place in a smaller scale, in a smaller tier where that scheme of development is not being triggered. I think within a zoning district, the footprint of the event would have to be over 10 acres, for example.
Yep, right.
So I guess I'm perplexed. My question is, if even one day is considered it to be commercial, how does anybody do an on-farm accessory project without running afoul of this statute? I just don't understand. I could see if it was 180 days a year that they're having concerts and people are flocking from all over the place to go to it. Okay, that's probably the extent to which it certainly would be easy to argue it is commercial. If they didn't have music but just serve food, does that lessen the ability to? I'm completely perplexed why we even bother with an on-farm accessory rule if one day is enough to trigger an Act 250 permit. I don't understand.
Or even this, instead of being on the stage, they were in front of the stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want that, but I'm just,
Well, not if it's raining.
yeah. Yeah, that was a rhetorical question. I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I know.
Ellen, anything? Okay. We are going to get the folks in here that have made the decision, and we'll let you be aware. I don't know if we can do that tomorrow. But our esteemed boss will do the best she can. And
You smiling for it, that's true.
and let us know. So with that, we're gonna call it a day, and we'll let you folks all know when we can move forward, hopefully tomorrow. or Wednesday or Thursday.